game of chess is like a sword fight.
Hey everybody, it's Galen from the Portland Chess Shop bringing you a Chess Shoutcast. We have Grandmaster Alexander Morozevich playing black pieces against FIDE Master Roach is the handle, from Ireland. Morozevich decides to play an unconventional b6 against the c4 setup. Morozevich, plays really creative, coming up with unusual ways to complicate the position. F5 is played. That's an unusual way to complicate the position. So there's a battle for the e4 square. E4 is overprotected by the d3 pawn, and the dark squared bishop goes to b4. Morozevich takes on e4, and then his opponent castles, because if he takes again, then his opponent will be able to take on b7. Bishop takes bishop. So knight moves to c6, pawn moves to h3. Pawn moves up to e5, holding this pawn on e4 so that the bishop is on the same color as the e4 pawn. Bishop moves to e3. Can I make pawn up? So this bishop is on the same color. We see a lot of games actually where Morozevich puts his bishop, puts all his pawns on the dark squares, and then tries to trade off the bishop. He kind of does that a lot. It's kind of weird. It's a little bit like the Trompowsky, which is an opening that I used to play, where you sometimes you trade off the bishop, put all your pawns on dark squares, and you have like a space advantage because you were able to trade space and a little bit of time for that dark squared bishop. So here we see knight moves back, pawn goes to f4, pawn takes pawn, knight invades. Pawn attacks the knight. Knight takes the other knight that was outposted, and pawn takes back, changing the structure of the position. It looks like e5 could be a critical square. Thus, Morozevich moves his queen to overprotect the e5 square. Pawn moves to f5. The pawns are making sort of a light squared blockade, but I'm afraid that the dark squares could be invaded, or I'm hoping that Morozevich will now be able to invade the dark squares. Rook moves to Morozevich takes a pawn with a little tactic. The pawn couldn't take back because then the queen is exposed because the e-file is open. But in the meantime, the knight was able to go to d3. In terms of time, we see that FM Roach, who's a huge underdog, 350-point underdog, is down about 10 seconds. All right, now Morozevich attacks the knight on e6. Makes sense to me. That knight is, outposted. It's really powerful. It's attacking a lot of key squares, really hampering black's mobility. And so Morozevich is like, okay, time to take that knight out. Now it's a question of what does white do? Does white retreat the knight and sort of say, okay, I admit I'm down in this position? No, he attacks the center. He moves his pawn forward, trying to make some sort of central break. But the knight takes on d5, which is really powerful. The queen is attacked, and now the knight is falling. Bishop moves back, and we see that black is up a pawn. 2 pawns. And so he resigns. He's also down 40 seconds. GM Morozevich Marathon! Woo!